Good afternoon. This is Rich Bernardo, Dr. Rich Bernardo, the author of the Alchemy, the Leadership Simulation. Here I am in my alchemy lab with my buddy, the alchemist, the unnamed alchemist behind me. And together, he and I are going to help you understand your specific role. And the two positions are actually expectations that you have to take to heart. You are the business person of your community, of the local community, the ABC school community, school district community, and you are part of the World Out There team. In addition, and you cannot forget this, you play another role. You have a content specialty, a theoretical specialization, and your specialization will be systems disciplines expert. And you need to remember that, because understanding that helps you in many shapes, manners, and forms we'll talk about in a moment. Although there will be a separate video helping you understand everything you need to know about systems disciplines, what a learning organization behaviors are. And we'll come to that down the line. We need to make a distinction between the idea of role play and role taking. Role play is you're the little dog on the Monopoly board, and you put it on go and you march around the board. And you don't really particularly play the dog, I don't think, as you march around the Monopoly board. What you're doing there is you're playing a role. You're playing the dog or whatever, the wheelbarrow, whatever else is the part of the game. But you're not taking any particular role. You don't necessarily have to behave like a dog to play in Monopoly. But in this particular simulation, and in all good simulations, you take a role, and you take the role into your soul, and you play that role as you're expected to play it. So there's a difference between role playing and role taking. They certainly overlap, but we can't take for granted that you know what you need to do by just having a title, which is in your case to be the business person. Enough said. So what we're driving at now is that you need to recognize the role that you as business person play in the World Out There team. And it's an important one. I sometimes think the educational leaders, the opposite team that you're on, although you're not in competition with each other, I can't emphasize that enough. I think sometimes tend to neglect or ignore or choose to forget about the input of business people and of community people, for that matter, because after all, you're not the educator, they are, and they think they have the handle on everything there is to be done in terms of a school district, when that's not true. This is about a whole with a W. The fact that we've divided you into two groups actually is meant to accent that you'll recognize that there's a great need to collaborate among all partners at all levels. That's an important learning to take from the simulation when you come out the other side of the tunnel. But in this case, I want you to just recognize that you are the business person in this community. You've been around a while. You've seen things happen, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. And you need to emphasize that to your team, your community team, and when it's appropriate, to emphasize it to the other side as well, because that might be something they may forget about. And in addition, because you run a business, and a successful one, you may not know the names for some of the things we're talking about, but you know that a business, a corporation, or any business has certain behaviors it has to practice in order for it to continue to survive. It needs to know how to learn and continue to upgrade itself and to nurture itself in order for it to be a viable, effective one. And the more viable and effective you are, the more likely you're able to hire people from the community to make a living out of that. And that obviously energizes the whole community, and by extension, the school district, to nurture itself in order to survive and to thrive. That's the broad point. But individually, let's just reiterate some points that you probably recognize instinctively, but I want to remind you about. And also recall that you've read the model of ABC community and of the school district more specifically. You've read Norman's story. And Norman's story is kind of connected to your story, if you think about it, as a business person. And all of that comes to bear with what this is about. Okay, so keep those things in mind. And just as a reminder, you represent the economic, commercial, and manufacturing parts of ABC district, and you recognize how things can sometimes overtake other things if we're not paying attention. And actually, ABC, as many communities in New York, I'm sorry, in the country, have suffered, particularly amidst this horrible pandemic, which is not only endangering the health of the whole world, if not the United States, but certainly also in playing havoc with our economy. And so those two things can't be separated all that easily. And so, in order for you to understand these trends, you need to probably pay attention to what that uh, model is about, and also pay attention to your partner in your group, who will be the economist demographer, who will talk about some things that you either already know or need to know in order for your own business, and for your community, commercial areas to continue to survive. And that's about paying attention to the geometric trends that are out there. And really, you're responsible for supporting the demographer and economist's points of view, and perhaps dramatizing how they affect you and the people who live with you, who have businesses with you on Main Street, or the factory that you own down around the corner near the railroad station. So, like the politician too, you need to pay attention to these things, and you need to also point out, and you can just draw from your own experiences and what you've read, and plus some links that I'll put up on the website, about the global, the national, and technological trends that are out there. Suppose your business would benefit from hefty infusion of artificial intelligence. Well, that would be great, but then that would also mean you need to hire people who know how to use that artificial intelligence. Does Norman sound like he's a candidate for that? He might be, had he been taught to learn those kinds of skills. And then again, it's also was likely that he's not. Those are the kinds of things you need to make the ABC school district understand in terms of the needs of the community economically and commercially as well. And so, yeah, you see consequences for Main Street, and you see needs to have to be taken care of yesterday, if not today, or today, if not yesterday. And you also see a future that's out in front of you, an emerging future that could be characterized by the losses of jobs, of a great deal of economic instability, and some developments that you don't want to see necessarily happen. So enough said about that. You need to pay attention. You can't be a pessimist. You've got to kind of take some of the Kool-Aid that your Steve Jobs colleague on your team is going to hopefully infuse into you. And you've got to listen to the politician who clearly wants to pave the way for it, help you and the school district and everyone benefit from some good futures-based planning, so that you can take lead for it, perhaps make lemonade out of lemons by reinventing itself. So keep that in mind. Also look for that website I told you about before, the one that's going to explain systems disciplines. And I need you there to point these things out to your colleagues. They may instinctively know them, be aware of them, maybe have heard or read about them. You're the person going to say, hey, that's a mental model issue. Or, hey, we need to learn how to learn together better. Or, I don't know what the vision is. What's the vision here? Do we have a vision, or are we at odds? So you're the person who's going to sometimes say the emperor's not wearing his clothes.